It was 5:42 a.m. when the sound of rolling wheels echoed softly in the hallway of a modest apartment building in Charlotte, North Carolina. Inside apartment 3B, Emily Carter, a 29-year-old nurse with a gentle smile and an unshakable work ethic, was zipping up her last suitcase. She had been awake all night, double-checking her documents, her tickets, and her plans. At 10:15 a.m., she was supposed to board a flight to Denver, a one-way ticket to start over, far from the shadows that had haunted her for the past 2 years. On the kitchen counter sat a half-drunk cup of coffee and a printed itinerary with the words Flight 327, Gate B14. Next to it was a battered leather wallet and a phone plugged into the wall, playing a quiet playlist she often used to calm her anxiety. Emily wasn't just going on a trip. She was escaping. For months, her friends had urged her to get away from Ryan Blake, her boyfriend-turned-nightmare. Ryan had once been charming, protective, even funny. But over time, his protectiveness had warped into control, his charm into manipulation, and his humor into sudden bursts of rage. The breaking point came 2 weeks earlier when Ryan had shown up at her workplace, screaming at her in front of patients after she didn't answer his texts quickly enough. That night, Emily decided she was done. She'd arranged her move in secret. Only her sister, Claire, and her closest friend, Jordan, knew her plan. She avoided social media, booked her ticket from a different city airport than usual, and even had a rideshare scheduled to pick her up hours before boarding. But what Emily didn't know, what no one could have predicted, was that the very morning she thought she was free would be her last. At 6:10 a.m., Emily's phone lit up with a series of incoming texts. The sender's name was unmistakable, Ryan. I know what you're doing. We need to talk before you leave. If you get on that plane, you'll regret it. Emily didn't respond. She knew from experience that answering would only invite more manipulation. Instead, she put her phone on silent, turned back to her packing, and told herself she'd be safe in just a few hours. But across town, Ryan wasn't just sending texts. He was already in his truck, speeding toward her apartment. Security footage from a convenience store later showed him buying a large coffee and slipping something small into his jacket pocket. Investigators would spend weeks trying to determine exactly what it was. By 6:30 a.m., Emily had loaded her bags by the front door. She sat down for one last cup of coffee, staring out the window at the pale, misty morning. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered if Ryan knew. She wondered if he'd come. The rideshare driver sent her a message at 6:45. On my way. See you soon. She smiled at the notification. Just a few more hours and she'd be thousands of miles away. At exactly 7:02 a.m., a neighbor, Mrs. Hayes, was leaving for her morning walk when she saw a tall man in a dark hoodie standing by Emily's door. Mrs. Hayes recognized Ryan immediately. She had seen him before, loud arguments in the hallway, doors slamming, Emily crying. But she didn't approach. She told herself it wasn't her business. Minutes later, the neighbor heard a muffled argument. Then silence. This would become one of the most haunting details in the case, because at the time, Mrs. Hayes had no idea that Emily's life was being decided on the other side of that thin apartment wall. At 7:18 a.m., Emily called her sister Claire. She kept her voice steady, not wanting to alarm her. Emily, hey, I'm leaving in about an hour. I'll text you when I'm at the gate. Claire, are you sure you're okay? Emily, yeah, just tired. I can't wait to be out of here. In the background, an unfamiliar sound interrupted, like something dropping onto the floor. Claire would later tell police she thought nothing of it at the time. That call would be the last time anyone in her family heard her voice. When the rideshare driver arrived at 7:40 a.m., he texted Emily, here. No answer. He waited 5 minutes before calling. No answer. By 7:50, he gave up, marking the ride as a no-show. What he didn't know was that, inside apartment 3B, the scene had already turned into a crime scene. At 8:02 a.m., security cameras caught Ryan leaving the apartment building. His hoodie was now off, and he was carrying nothing but his phone and keys. His pace was calm, almost casual, too casual. When investigators later studied this footage, they noted he looked directly at the camera as he walked out, almost as if daring someone to connect him to what had happened upstairs. It wasn't until 9:10 a.m. that Mrs. Hayes, returning from her walk, noticed something strange. Emily's apartment door was ajar. She knocked. No answer. She pushed it open slightly and called out Emily's name. That's when she saw the suitcase by the door, and just beyond it, Emily's lifeless body on the floor of the living room. Panic set in. Mrs. Hayes dialed 911 with trembling hands. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. Emily had been strangled. There were no signs of forced entry, which meant she had either let the killer in willingly, or he had never left. The half-finished cup of coffee still sat on the counter, now cold. Her phone lay face down beside her, lit with unread messages from Ryan. Meanwhile, at Charlotte Douglas International Airport, Gate B14 remained open until the last boarding call for Flight 327. Passengers shuffled in, unaware that one of their fellow travelers would never arrive. The empty seat, 14A, became a chilling reminder to her sister when she later learned the timing. By noon, Ryan was the prime suspect. Police issued an alert to surrounding states, but he had already vanished. His truck was later found abandoned near a wooded area off Interstate 85. Inside were traces of mud, a torn hoodie, and an airline boarding pass to Denver, booked in Emily's name but never used. It was clear he had known exactly where she was going. Investigators wasted no time digging into Ryan's digital footprint. His phone records told a story he probably thought was erased, search histories about how to track someone without them knowing. Can you stop someone from boarding a flight? And chillingly, how long until police find a body? The most damning evidence came from traffic cameras. They showed Ryan's truck parked near Emily's building hours before sunrise, proving he had been watching and waiting. Friends told police that in the weeks leading up to her planned move, Ryan had been unusually calm, a dangerous calm. Those who knew him best said it wasn't a sign he had changed, but rather a sign he was planning something. When Claire was informed of Emily's death, she collapsed. The guilt hit her instantly. I should have told her not to go back to the apartment. I should have made her come stay with me the night before. Her words would later echo in media interviews, highlighting the cruel reality that in domestic abuse cases, leaving is often the most dangerous moment of all. Claire turned her grief into determination, urging police to move quickly before Ryan disappeared for good. Why had Ryan purchased a ticket to Denver in Emily's name? Investigators pieced it together. If Emily never boarded the flight, but her ticket was scanned, it could create confusion about her whereabouts, possibly delaying the discovery of her body. It was a disturbing sign that Ryan had thought several steps ahead. He wanted not only to kill her but to hide the timeline of her death. 3 days after the murder, a break came from an unlikely source. A gas station clerk in South Carolina remembered a man matching Ryan's description buying snacks, water, and camping supplies. Security footage confirmed it. It was Ryan. He had shaved his beard and cut his hair, but his eyes were unmistakable. The clerk also recalled something strange. Ryan had paid in cash, but kept glancing at the security camera. Police tracked his movements to a remote stretch of forest near the state line. Search teams combed the area, but Ryan had vanished again, leaving behind only a burned campsite and the remnants of food wrappers. Some officers believed he was living in the woods, using survival skills to stay off the radar. Others feared he had gotten help from someone who didn't know, or didn't care, what he had done. It was a routine traffic stop in rural Georgia that finally ended the manhunt. A deputy noticed a beat-up sedan weaving slightly on the road. When he pulled it over, the driver handed him a fake ID. But the deputy recognized the face from a wanted bulletin. Ryan Blake was taken into custody without a fight, his expression eerily calm, like a man who had been expecting this moment all along. The trial began 9 months later. The courtroom was packed, friends, family, reporters, and advocates for domestic violence victims. The prosecution painted a clear picture. Ryan had planned the murder to ensure Emily never left him, timing it so she wouldn't have a chance to escape. The defense tried to argue that the killing was a crime of passion, claiming Ryan lost control when he confronted her. But the evidence, texts, surveillance footage, and his travel plans told another story. Claire took the stand, her voice trembling but unbroken. She spoke of Emily's dreams of starting over, of her gentle heart, and of the fear she lived with every day. When the prosecutor asked her what she wanted from the court, she answered without hesitation. Justice, not just for Emily, but for every woman who never makes it to her new life. After only 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned, guilty of first-degree murder. Ryan Blake was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no emotion as the sentence was read, just stared forward, expressionless, as if the outcome had been inevitable. Outside the courthouse, Claire told reporters, "This isn't the ending Emily deserved, but at least it's an ending where her killer can't hurt anyone else." Emily Carter's story is a heartbreaking reminder that escape isn't always enough. Sometimes, the danger follows. Her case sparked renewed conversations about how law enforcement and communities can better protect those leaving abusive relationships, especially in the critical hours before and after they try to get away. If you or someone you know is in an abusive situation, please don't wait. Reach out to domestic violence hotlines, shelters, and advocates. Even if you think they are almost out, that's often when they are in the most danger. On True Crime Hub, we share these stories not just to remember the victims, but to prevent the next tragedy. If Emily's story moved you, share it. Talk about it. Keep her memory alive by making sure no one else's escape ends the same way.